Tying another Carrie Stevens pattern today. This is the Colonel Bates. Now, a lot of her flies that she created, she named after people that she knew, she or her husband, people that were important in their lives. I'm not certain 100% if that's how the Colonel Bates got its name. I do know that it was a very popular fly, and it's still a popular fly today. It is tied commercially and sold today, so it's still very, very productive. I also know that a number of Atlantic salmon patterns, more modern Atlantic salmon patterns, were produced based on the Colonel Bates streamer. It's a very colorful fly, very typical Carrie Stevens pattern. It is a full tinsel body instead of floss, which is kind of interesting to do if you haven't done, and I've got a few tips in the video for making that a little bit easier. That's the Colonel Bates. I'll get started tying. So I'm going to start the Colonel Bates with my hook and the vise. This is a Martinek 8x long streamer hook in a size 4. Go ahead and debarb the hook. For thread, I'm going to just use a Wapsi UTC Ultra thread and 140 Denier in black. Because it is a tinsel body, I don't have to worry about darkening up any floss. And I can start the thread actually further down the hook shank, because I'll put a base layer of thread down as I'm coming back up. I'm going to stop about maybe a fifth of the way, a quarter of the shank in front of the point of the hook, and that's where I'm going to tie in my tag. Tag on this is a silver tinsel. I'm using a size 12 Danville Mallard silver tinsel. I'm going to tie this in with the gold side up. Run my thread down to just a little bit past the point of the hook. I'm at the end of the shank, and then run my thread back up. I'm going to put a little half a drop of head cement right on those thread wraps. This is going to be a way of helping that tag a little bit stay more intact. So hopefully if it gets broken, it won't all unravel. I'll apply that tag in. Trim away the excess. Now I'm ready for the tail. The tail is just some red hackle. I'm going to use, this is a whiting American Rooster saddle in red. You could use some Schlappen if you want something a little bit softer. I like the length on these a little bit because if you're not careful, you can very easily get some bulk right in the back here that we have to kind of watch out for. I'm going to measure those about a half a shank length and tie those in. Make certain I get those secured in. I'll start advancing my thread forward. You can see I'm going to have just a little bit of bulk right there, but I think it'll be okay. Now, if I want to try and smooth this out just a little bit and get a little bit of a transition, bring your thread back. I'm going to flatten my thread out so it won't bulk up quite as much. and then bring this forward. Just kind of filling that in just a little bit as you advance down the hook shank. Doesn't have to be super smooth because we've got a double layer of tinsel we're going to put on this. Like I said, I am going to flatten my thread out as I go forward here, and that's just so that I can cover the hook a little bit quicker. It isn't, again, to make it nice and smooth. Bring my thread to about 2 to 3 eye lengths behind the eye of the hook. This is where I'm going to tie in the body. The body, again, is the same size 12 silver tinsel. I want to make certain you get a piece here that's at least a good 12 inches long, because, again, you don't want to run out of body material while you're tying this in. I'm going to trim a nice point on the end of this tinsel. I want to make certain I have a nice steep point on this. Something like that. Because we're going to tie this in with the silver side up. So I want to grab just the tip of that. If I have that too steep this way, then I don't have much to grab, and often you pull it out. If I have a, I guess not steep, but a greater slope to it, then it doesn't pull out so easy. Now I'm going to bend that forward just a little so that it kind of stays out of the way. Because to help our body here, we're going to wrap down the tinsel all the way down the shank and then back up, so we get a double layer. But to help secure that a little bit, I'm going to put some head cement all along those thread wraps. I don't want this to be too heavy of an application, because I don't necessarily want it dripping off of the body. I do want enough so that as I am wrapping this forward, one, there's enough to glue that down. Two, I do want it kind of seeping out of between the wraps, so that the next layer that comes over has some glue that it kind of squishes down on the previous layer, and it just secures it a little bit better. You want to try and get these edge to edge. You don't want to overlap them, because we don't want to have any bulk underneath. If you do get a gap, like I have a little bit of a gap right here in that, that's fine. Just leave that. Part of the reason we're doing a double layer, the second layer will come along and cover that up. If you're doing a single layer, you have to be much more careful and much more diligent about not having any gaps of thread showing through. Couple of things to note here. I had mentioned earlier about this little bit of bulk on the back. By tapering that a little bit, we kind of reduced that. You're still going to get it, and you just can't get around it because of the tailing material back here. So no matter what, you're going to have a little bit there. Try to minimize that. But you'll notice that by putting a layer of tinsel down and back up, I get a much smoother body here. I don't have any black thread showing through on that body. So I'll secure that down, smoothing out the front and the head area just a little bit. Now I'm ready to tie in the throat. There's no belly on this. Colonel Bates also does not have an underwing on this. It does have a throat of brown hackle. I'm going to use some Schlappen in this. I've taken some fibers from both sides of a nice full feather. I'm going to measure those about a half a shank length long and tie those right in underneath and trim away the excess. The wing on the Colonel Bates is 2 yellow hackles and 1 white hackle. And the white hackle is tied in just a little bit shorter than the yellow hackles. And then there is a jungle cock eye on this. So again, not a complicated wing, but all in all, the colors and everything, it's very, very colorful fly. So again, I have pre-made these wings. As you can see, I've got 2 yellow hackles for both sides, 1 white one that's a little bit shorter than the yellow. Oh, I'm sorry, there is a cheek on these of gray mallard. So just your regular natural mallard flank is the cheek, and then an eye of jungle cock. So I'll bring those together and I'll trim the excess butts so that I have a nice little handle for our head on this. I will open this up and place both sides, place the wings on the sides of the hook, collecting these together on top of the hook shank. So we have these both together and they're on top of the hook shank, but I want those wings to drape over the sides of the hook. There we go. So my hackles and my shoulder also go down below the hook shank here, but the racuses of those pretty much run straight down the hook shank, and you can just see that red tail inside there. All of this is together well and in good position, so I'll brace that and start making the head of the fly. Like a lot of Carrie Stevens patterns, the Colonel Bates has a red band of thread right in the middle of the head here. So I'm going to flatten my thread out for the whip finish. Cut away the black thread, and then I'm going to use some red. This is a Danville UTC, no, excuse me, Danville 6/0 in red. Attach that right in the middle of the head here. want to make certain that the band is only about the width of the band here is about a third of the head space. I should say even the head of the fly. So I got a third that's black, third that's red, and a third that's black. But the thing is, you want to also make certain that you're putting enough red in here for the red to stand out. Problem that you run into is that black thread underneath it will darken it up. Once I have that in place, I want to double check I don't have any stray wraps anywhere. Get a 4 or 5 turn whip finish right on that red band. Cut away the thread. I think I have a little bit of a tag right there, the thread that I anchored down. See if I can get some of that out of there. Reduced it a little bit. I'm going to put some head cement on the head at this point. This will soak down in there and secure all that thread, and none of that's going to come unraveled. Then I'm going to put a top coat of hard as hull on this to kind of seal it, gives it a little bit of a shine. I don't want a super smooth shine on this. You certainly could put a nicer and smoother shine on the heads for these if you really want to. But that will complete the Colonel Bates. Again, an interesting fly. I don't know a lot about the history on this, like I said, other than it was modified for a number of Atlantic salmon patterns off of the Colonel Bates. But I like it. It's a colorful fly, fun to tie, very productive. Like I said, it is still tied today and fished today. So there's the Colonel Bates. Thanks for watching today.
Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.